Tournament arcs are notorious within the medium for delivering the hype with all the matchups and showdowns that a fan can think of. Whether it's an academy setting, a grouping of the elite fighters, and even an event for the underworld, some of the most iconic moments and fights have all came from tournaments. Continuing on with my recent glazing for World Trigger, today we're talking about Act 1's main event, the Rank Wars. This is the seasonal tournament of official matches between agents of similar ranking in order to climb the ranks in hopes of a promotion. Each match can have 3 to 4 way squad battles with a point ranking system and a time limit, also allowing the squad of lowest standing to choose the map, and from there it's a matter of whose team will manage to come out on top. Considering its length and amount of events that occur throughout the season, one can say that this isn't your typical tournament, especially when you have a war arc that occurs right before and a second major battle in the middle. However, these extra layers of events alongside Ashihara's consistency with loss and progression down to character arcs, in my opinion, puts the Rank Wars in a league of its own. Sometimes you feel as if you're watching an esports, and in others you are brought back down to earth with such emotional moments filled with growth and triumph. Before going any further, I want to discuss one of the most important aspects to me when it comes to a tournament, and that's grow as you go. A tournament shouldn't simply be limited to knocking out the opposition until you win. It's because you meet so many different people on your level and so many convictions clash that through every encounter lies an opportunity to grow in some way, whether it be personally or combative. Can't forget to mention the times where a character is met with a conflict that ties deeply into a story's themes, leading to those iconic moments. One of the reasons why Deku vs Todoroki is loved is because Deku put himself in a spot that would essentially doom his position in the tournament, but for the sake of reaching out to a classmate in need. There are things to be gained even in loss, and with a story that speaks so much about reaching out, you can see why it's such a powerful moment for people. In World Trigger's case, each team has their flaws in both captains and in squad mates, and in that they work towards overcoming those hills. Especially for somebody like Mikumo when it comes to weakness and leadership, and for Amatori, the strength that lies beyond hesitancy. With all that being said, let's talk about the goal here when it comes to this tournament, because people don't start throwing hands for nothing. The introduction of Mikumo and Chika are both rooted in the situation regarding Renji Amatori, who went to the neighborhood. In order to find out about his whereabouts, they would need to achieve the position of A rank in order to be selected for the away mission. They would be joined by Kuga, who also gained purpose for the away mission in hopes of retrieving Replica, who sacrificed himself in the climax of the After Crater invasion. From there, it's a pretty straightforward objective, but the complexity begins within the process. Border has grown a lot from where it started, and the level of talented agents and squads currently around would make each match a pretty big deal. Taking into consideration of the seasonal time limit as well, the stakes are pretty high, knowing that every loss is a monumental blow on the leaderboard and that time is not on anyone's side. We're gonna process this match by match, looking at the anime, and start with round 1 of Tamakoma 2 versus Yoshizato squad versus Mamiya squad. Now this match is a clear blowout. This was mainly a showcase for others to see how Chika and Yuma can handle themselves while Mikumo would still be recovering from his post-war injuries. The real first set of matches comes down to Tamakoma 2 versus Suwa squad and Arifune squad in round 2 and versus Suzunari first and Nasu squad in round 3. Keeping consistent with my war arc video, I won't be doing a play-by-play because otherwise you'd all be here for an hour, but I will keep talking about the key aspects in these fights. Starting with round 2, in terms of long range, Arifune squad had a much bigger advantage. Giving them the space needed would bite the other teams in the back, so a form of natural alliance was formed between Tamakoma and Suwa by utilizing the map choice to force both teams to take caution, take out the snipers, and then deal with each other after the long range pressure was removed. What makes this such a good first impression for the future is that we got a clear showcase of where Mikumo's strength lies. He may not be the strongest, but in terms of IQ, his presence on the battlefield makes him a major threat. Utilizing his teammates in a pretty close final play by the main duo, the final score of this match came out to 6-2-1, with Tamakoma 2 moving up to 8th place. Now round 3 is a little spicier in terms of momentum. The map choice here was aimed to subdue Chika's powerful sniping cannon, and while she may not be able to aim at a target so easily, she can still aim for the infrastructure of the map itself. In order to restrict movement and prevent Nasu squad from grouping up, Chika does blow up the bridge, leaving the map's central location demolished. This ends up crippling Nasu squad's strategy and forcing them to take whatever fights they can. While Nasu herself is a profound shooter, the rest of her squad mates find themselves outclassed. past. Kuga vs. Ko was another huge highlight, being a clash of heavy past weighed on the blades. This fight gave Kuga a bit more spotlight with his craftiness, as he manages to take down one of the best attackers within the series while underwater, as there is no amount of experience that can prepare you for the unpredictable. The final score of this match came down to 4-3-2, moving Tamakoma 2 up to the upper group division in the bracket. Notably, Mikumo's experience as a shooter was abused by Nasu, and she ended up baiting him, calling his movements straightforward, which led him to bail out. This is where the grow as you go notion begins to stack its weight before the inevitable breakthrough, but more on that heading into Season 2's fights. Round 4 is where the reality check hits pretty hard. So hard that 15-year-old me could not help but be jaw-dropped at seeing Mikumo getting wall-banged. In this match, we had a 4-way squad match with Tamakoma 2 versus Nanomiya squad versus Kagura squad versus Azuma squad. These opponents were some of the best B-rankers around, and with things going a bit too well for Tamakoma's progression, it's bound to get shaky at some point. The crazy thing about this match is that the highlight happened so early, and that's with Mikumo being eliminated right off the bat. Captain Azuma recognizes Mikumo's presence on the field, and as such, by removing the brains of the operation off the field, you immediately end up crippling Tamakoma, pushing Yuma into a very tight clutch position, and on top of that, we get to the issue at hand where Chika is hesitant when it comes to shooting people, a major flaw when it comes to PvP type battles and ultimately hinders any acquisition of points. The final score 1-3-2-2, moving Tamakoma back to the middle group. Now this right here is when that weight forces a breakthrough. Again, with only so much time before the season ends, the last thing Tamakoma needs is a loss, and even with it being their first one, it exposed major flaws within the team. Yuma can only carry so much, and even then, the skill ceiling keeps getting higher. There has to be some form of pace being kept up, thus promoting the grow part of my mentioned phrase. This battle would serve as the stopping point for Season 1, and would also serve as the introduction for new upgrades heading into Season 2. Thankfully, around this time, Toei Animation had come very far, especially when looking at One Piece that year, so the anime also evolved across the board. Now, as far as how Osamu and Chika improved, both of them gained a major boost in the utility department that ended up making Kuga's life especially easier down the line. Starting with our captain, it's clear that in terms of combat experience, there is a major difference. Mikumo won't be able to close that gap in such a short amount of time, especially with Trion amounts being vastly smaller. With that in mind, the one thing he should be aiming for is making Kuga even stronger. Kuga's skill range is fairly at A rank already, so why not add in something that would make it feel as if you were fighting an S rank agent? The spider trigger is such a perfect power-up that manages to be cool even though it isn't exactly a weapon change. The ability to add on more movement to Kuga's already crafty style on top of increasing his speed and then zoning enemies off for map control proved to be very valuable in the hands of such a tactful main character. Not to mention settings like color changes and invisible wires to really restrict movement and invoke hesitation. In a similar fashion, Chika also discovered the lead bullet, which when a target is hit, a large piece of heavy material would cause a person's mobility to be immensely impaired. Though it uses up more Trion, it didn't come much at a cost due to hers being one of the biggest amounts in the verse. Both of these upgrades got some major love come the kickoff of Season 2 with Round 5. Before we get to that, it's important to briefly mention the Galapoula invasion. During this same round, the Galapoula nation, who serves under Aftercrater, was sent to cripple Border from issuing payback by hitting the away mission ship. This entire battle adds a little extra spice to the rank wars because of the developments that come from it regarding Hiyus as well as new neighbor allies. The key details here is that firstly, Hiyus will end up having full motivation to join Tamakoma 2 in the rank wars, pushing into round 7 as he wants to get back home to protect his master. Secondly, Galapoula ends up becoming allies to Tamakoma. In exchange to delay the away mission, they would decide to become allies for when the time comes. Also giving us major lore drops about Yotaro being a prince of the nation known as Aristera, and his sister being a princess operating what is known as a mother trigger, which is fueling Border's Trion supply. Furthermore, Raijin Maru is being known as a crown trigger, which is the protector of the mother trigger. All this information adds onto more anticipation for what lies beyond the rank wars, but still is very much appreciated looking at the now. We also came to learn that during the away mission, Aftercrater might come back for a rematch at the same time, making it a two-way invasion and probably the biggest future event in the series. One thing Ashihara is gonna gonna do, it's sell me on the hype, man. He's just too good at what he does. Pulling back into round 5, Tamakoma 2 versus Katori Squad versus Kakizaki Squad was our lineup, and overall, this was a pretty big beatdown. The wire strategy made Kuga an absolute speed demon, and combined with Chika's lead bullet, it was slight work. Kuga practically soloed Kakizaki Squad, and Katori Squad's inability to work together was their own undoing. With so many new strategies being suddenly brought out by Tamakoma 2, it really caught everyone off guard, but this is what is so satisfying about these upgrades. In general, they don't guarantee any eliminations, but rather how they are used can make your battles exponentially easier. Even though Chika and Mikumo ended up being eliminated, Tamakoma's overwhelming victory ended up putting them back in the upper group with a final score of 7-1-1. Round 6 is where you can say that it was a hard fight all the way through. The lineup here is Tamakoma 2 versus Ikuma Squad versus Oji Squad. The real outlier here being Captain Ikuma due to his Senku Kogetsu technique, which allows a long-range slash in a span of 0.2 seconds for 40 meters. This tends to guarantee an elimination majority of the time if you're caught in it. Now, Captain Oji is one of the few characters that manages to keep somewhat of a pace with Mikumo in terms of intellect. Similar to Captain Azuma in round 4, eliminating him early is an ideal strategy as rendezvousing with Kuga would just make the match tougher on everyone. However, we must remember that after round 4, Mikumo vowed to never be taken out early again without doing anything. He ends up baiting and then zoning the other two squads to fight each other, allowing him to gain some distance. This match had a lot of good plays and showcased just how far the animation had come with some really clean cuts. Overall, Mikumo ends up being eliminated alongside Kuga, and Chika ends up bailing out voluntarily to avoid giving away any points. The final score 4-3-3, with Tamakoma 2 being up by 1, but no rankings were swapped. Round 7 and 8 takes us into Season 3, and side note, but the opening for this final portion of the Rank Wars was really emotional. I remember wondering if the show would ever return after Season 1 had wrapped up, and to finally be at the end of this long road really hit home for the fan that I am. Now for round 7, Hiyus would end up joining at this point, being Tamakoma's next power player, boasting a mix of attacker and shooter playstyle, with the Iscudo trigger being the utility nobody saw coming. If we recall back to the After Crater invasion, Jin ended up baiting him to be held in place with this trigger, so for him to make use of it for both cover as well as locking off areas and even controlling momentum is an incredible callback. We also must take note of the negotiations that took place in order for Hiyus to get on the team. In exchange for his enlistment, Hiyus would not only serve as a guide on the away mission, but Amatori would also have to agree to join due to her high Treon amount to power the ship. This would only put even more pressure for Yuma and Mikumo to succeed if they wanted to protect Chika. One thing Commander Kido is gonna do is ensure that he also gets his use of the bargain. It's important to note that the top B-rank squads would be allowed to participate for the away mission due to Amatori bringing more Treon. Thus, reaching A rank wasn't needed, but rather staying as high as you can in the bracket would be. Round 7 is one of the best rounds, not only because of all the strategies at play, but the pure amount of chaos that comes with fighting in a multi-floor environment. The matchup for this round being Tamakoma 2 versus Kegura Squad versus Azuma Squad versus Suzunari First. Big rematches with big stakes, and it definitely lived up to the manga's hype. In this match, we had Suzunari First utilizing night vision with the mall's lights, Azuma Squad using dummy beacons for decoys, and Chika throwing a damn nuke at the map to get kills. Absolute craziness, but I think this match represents the spirit of the Rank Wars the best in terms of bringing your best strategies to the table and what happens when you are not prepared to counter. In this round, Mikumo and Hiyus end up getting eliminated, but Chika's firepower ends up dominating the map because she was left uncontested. Unlike everyone else who moved inside to gain the high ground first, she primarily stayed outside, and as such, left her open to do some serious damage that really limited how all the enemy teams would proceed. The final score being 6-2-2-1, with Tamakoma 2 taking another overwhelming victory, pushing them to 3rd place in the ranking. Before getting to round 8, it would be fraudulent of me to not talk about the most important character development we got heading towards the final round with Chika. For a long time now, we knew that she had a hard time shooting people, at least when it came to shoot to kill. She was fine with lead bullet because it wasn't taking them out, but with Fayus not pulling any punches, the time to address it had finally arrived. Chika's backstory is rooted with her brother, but it's also rooted in a place of guilt and fear. Her large Treon reserves caused her to be chased by Treon soldiers as a child, on top of her childhood friend Aoba getting kidnapped. At the time, border had not been fully established, and what she feared was the blame being put on her. That worry carrying itself into the rank wars because of her large reserves. She feared that because of her advantage in terms of Treon reserves, would people fear her or even think she's unfair and even hate her. In terms of the rank wars, she's trying to keep even with the playing field as much as possible because she acknowledges all of this, but at the same time, there are moments when her power is necessary. She comes to understand that the people around her would never fault her for not being able to shoot, and yet that in itself is more the reason why she needs to give it her all. Chika's development has always been a slow burn deep down because you don't rush and overcome fear over just one night. There are steps to the process, and with a positive environment, you can end up making substantial progress. This was the final piece of the puzzle for maximum efficiency as we pull into round 8. All these years of build-up, major battles, losses, and progression has led up to this one round. The squads this round: Tamakoma 2 versus Nanomiya squad versus Ikuma squad versus Yuba squad. Yuba squad ended up being our last introduction, with a sharpshooter captain who also has his bone to pick with Nanomiya. All the top dogs of B rank in one match, and I truly cannot stress enough that this match had it all. We had the most insane stretch of cuts in this one match, even from people like Akihiro Ota. We had extreme hustle, daring challenges, city level explosions because why the hell not, crazy good teamwork in snipes, and a final rematch of the century. There are so many highlights, I damn near cried of peak fiction. On top of Chika getting her first one-shot kill in such a dire moment, we also had the iconic line for the World Trigger fandom of "We win." Mikumo ended up conducting the most insane outplay with Nanomiya, using his own information against him by baiting his capabilities because of his Treon levels, shocking the crowd, and I'm sure all the anime onlys for this series, and for me, a huge grin on my face, giving Kuga the sauciest cut he has had yet to close off the fight with a major victory. The final score 6-3 to 2-2, with Tamakoma 2's victory putting them at second place in the rankings and qualifying them for the away mission. The Rank Wars began its anime adaptation on July 19th, 2015 and concluded January 23rd, 2022, pushing a close 7-year-long journey and gave me everything you could want from a tournament arc. The growth, the hype, the stakes, the moments of shock, the empathy from the tears, the cheers from victory, and the developments for the future. This series, this tournament, is masterclass shonen at its best for how Ashihara navigates through every little thing with his story. Building this entire tournament arc felt like watching brick by brick be placed every month and every episode, and for it to have brought such a satisfying victory with not a single ounce of inconsistency in sight, what more could a fan of Shonen Jump's greatest underdog ask for? With that, it's gonna bring me to the end of this video. As always, thank you very much for watching, and make sure to leave all your thoughts about the Rank Wars in the comments section down below. Till then, be safe out there, and till the next video.